I had told 147 patients they had cancer. I remembered every single face. The elderly woman who asked if she'd see her granddaughter's wedding. The construction worker who wanted to know if he could finish his deck first. The young mother who didn't cry until I mentioned her children's names. But when Dr. Whitmore said the words to me, I didn't think about survival rates or treatment protocols. I thought about my wife and whether she'd cry when I told her. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage for 43 minutes. I counted. The concrete walls pressed in around me, the fluorescent lights passing overhead like trapped insects. My hands were still on the steering wheel, knuckles white, as if I might drive somewhere that this wasn't true. Stage 3 Hodgkin lymphoma, treatable 80% survival rate with aggressive chemotherapy. I had recited those same statistics to patients dozens of times, always with that measured tone of cautious optimism I'd perfected over 18 years. Now they felt like a foreign language. I should have called Melissa first. That's what husbands do. That's what I would have told any of my patients. Go home, hold your spouse, let them hold you. But something had for months, and I didn't know if she'd care. 3 weeks ago I came home early. A surgery had been cancelled, and I thought I'd surprise her with lunch. I walked through the front door and heard her laughing. Really laughing. That full-throated sound I hadn't heard directed at me in years. She was on the phone in the kitchen, her back to me, twirling a strand of hair around her finger the way she used to when we were dating. "Stop it," she said, her voice playful. "You're terrible." When she turned and saw me, the laughter died. Her face went through 3 expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, then something that looked almost like fear, then a smooth mask of willy composure. "I have to go," she said into the phone. "Yeah, later." She ended the call without saying goodbye. "Who was that?" I asked. "Ashley, her sister. Just catching up." I nodded and went to change out of my scrubs. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Ashley. "Hey, Nathan. Is Melissa around? I've been trying to reach her all morning." I looked at my wife through the bedroom doorway. She was making a salad, humming to herself, her phone face down on the counter. "She just stepped out," I said. "I'll have her call you." When I told Melissa her sister had called, she didn't miss a beat. "Oh, I was on with a work friend earlier. I must have gotten confused. She didn't have a job, hadn't for 6 years, but I let it go. I shouldn't have." I pulled into our driveway at 6:47 p.m. The house looked the same as always, a $1.2 million monument to the life we'd built in Westlake Hills. Her bedrooms for 2 people. A pool we used twice a year. A 3-car garage holding 2 cars. The American dream hollowed out from the inside. Melissa was in the kitchen when I walked in, a glass of wine in one hand, her phone in the other. The TV was on in the living room. Some home renovation show playing to an empty couch. She had a gift for filling silence with noise. "Hey," she said without looking up. "How was your day?" I set my keys on the counter. "Can you put the phone down for a minute?" Something in my voice must have registered, because she actually looked at me. Her brow furrowed, not with concern exactly, but with the mild irritation of someone whose routine has been disrupted. "What's wrong?" I sat down at the kitchen island. The granite was cold into my palms. I'd picked out this countertop 6 years ago, back when I still believed the house we were building together mattered. "I got some news today from Dr. Whitmore." "Your checkup?" She set the phone down but didn't move closer. "And I have cancer. Mel stage 3 Hodgkin lymphoma." Silence. I watched her face, searching for something. Fear, grief, love. I would have settled for surprise. She blinked twice. Then she asked, "What does that mean for your practice?" I felt something crack inside me, some small structure I'd been propping up for years. "I'll need to take some time off for treatment. Probably reduce my hours for 6 months. Achy longan." She nodded, processing. Still no movement toward me. No touch. The distance between us, maybe 8 feet of Italian tile, felt like miles. Will insurance cover everything, or are we looking at out-of-pocket? Insurance should cover most of it. The deductible. We should talk to Ryan about adjusting our portfolio. She was already reaching for her fun again. Medical bills can drain savings fast, even with good coverage. I'll set up a meeting this week. Ryan Foster, our financial advisor. Melissa had found him 2 years ago through some friend of a friend. I'd met him once, signed some papers, and let Melissa handle the rest. That was our arrangement. I made the money, she managed it. Division of labor, she'd called it when we set it up. A partnership. Mel. My voice came out harder than I intended. "I just told you I have cancer." She looked up, and for a moment I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Annoyance, calculation. Then she crossed to me, placed a hand on my shoulder, brief perfunctor, and squeezed once. "I know, and we'll get through it. You're strong, Nathan. You'll beat this." She released my shoulder and stepped back. "But someone has to think about the practical stuff, right? That's what I do. That's my job." Her fun bust. She glanced at the screen, tilted it away so I couldn't see, and typed a quick reply. "Who's that?" "Just a reminder, yoga tomorrow morning." She picked up her wine glass and took a long sip. "Have you eaten? I can heat up some of last night's pasta." I watched her move around the kitchen, efficient and detached, and I realized I was looking at a stranger, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 12 years, whose face I'd memorized in 1,000 different lights. I didn't know her at all. Before she tentac, I caught a glimpse of her phone screen, the contact name at the top of her texts. The first week of chemotherapy stripped me down to my component parts. I'd administered these drugs to patients for nearly 2 decades. I knew the side effects like old friends, the nausea, the fatigue, the metallic taste that turned every meal into a chore. But knowing and experiencing our different countries, and I was an immigrant now, stuntling through without a map. Melissa drove me to my first session. She sat in the waiting room for the first hour, flipping through magazines and checking her phone. Then she leaned on to me. "I need to run a few errands. You'll be fine here, right? I'll be back before you're done." "Sure," I said. The IV dripped poison into my arm, 1 drop at a time. "Go ahead." She picked me up 30 minutes after my infusion ended. She had shopping bags in the back seat, Nordstrom, Whole Foods, a boutique I didn't recognize. "You look pale," she said, pulling out of the hospital lot. "I'm being poisoned. That's sort of the point." She didn't laugh. She used to laugh at my dark humor. She used to elbow me and say I was terrible and then laugh anyway. Now she just turned up the radio and drove. By day 3, I was spending most of my time in bed. The fatigue was crushing. Not sleepy tired, but bone tired. The kind that makes lifting your arm feel like moving concrete. Melissa brought me toast and water, checked on me twice a day, and otherwise went about her life. On day 5, I woke from a dead sleep at 2:15 in the afternoon. The house was quiet except for a voice drifting up from the backyard. I shuffled to the window, staying back from the glass. Melissa was on the patio, phone pressed to her ear, pacing the way she did when she was excited about something. She was wearing yoga pants and a tight tank top, her hair in a ponytail. She looked good. She always looked good. "He's too tired to notice anything," she said. The words floated up to me, crisp in the still air. "No, he just sleeps all day. It's actually kinda convenient." She laughed. That laugh, the real one, the one that used to be mine. "We just need to be patient. A few more months," and she turned, walking further from the house, and I lost the rest. I stood there for a long time, my reflection ghostly in the window glass, a sick man in pajamas, watching his wife make plans that didn't include him. On day 7, I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked at our credit card statements. Melissa handled our finances. That was the deal. I was too busy saving lice to worry about money, so she took over the accounts, the investments, the day-to-day. I had no reason to distrust her. I logged into our credit card portal on my laptop, my hands shaking from more than chemo. It took me 3 tries to remember the password. The charges were all there, scrolling down the screen like evidence in a case I was building against myself. Groceries, gas, the usual household expenses, and then boutique Hotel Austin, 289, Tuesday, 2:47 p.m. I scrolled back. The same charge appeared the previous week, and the week before that, and the week before that. 4 months of Tuesday afternoon hotel charges. Melissa's yoga class was on Tuesdays. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The cracks in the plaster formed patterns that looked almost like branches, like a tree growing upside down above me. I was a scientist. I needed proof before conclusions. But in my gut, I already knew. I called my sister Lauren that night after Melissa went to bed. I sat on the back patio wrapped in a blanket, my voice barely above a whisper. Lauren was 4 years younger than me, a family law attorney in Houston. We talked every few weeks, the kind of surface-level check-ins that siblings do when their lives have diverged. She was single-driven, the kind of woman who scared off men by being better at everything than they were. "Hey, big brother." Her voice was warm through the phone. "I heard about the diagnosis from Mom. How are you holding up?" "I've been better, I bet. Listen, I can drive up this weekend if you want. Keep you company while Melissa I wanted to ask you something." I kept my voice low even though Melissa was upstairs with the door closed. Hypothetically. A pause. Lauren's silences were always deliberate, always waiting. Hypothetically, she repeated. What would someone need to file for divorce in Texas if there was infidelity involved? Hypothetically. The pause stretched longer this time. When she spoke, her voice was careful. "Nathan, what's happening? Just answer the question, Lauren, please." She exhaled slowly. "Texas is a no-fault state, so you don't need to prove infidelity to file. But if you can prove it, it can affect the division of assets. Judges have discretion in cases involving fault. And what counts as proof? Photographs, financial records, witness testimony, recordings, if they're obtained legally. Texas is a one-party consent state, so if you're part of the conversation, you can record it without the other person's knowledge. One-party consent, I repeated. "Nathan." Her voice sharpened. "Talk to me. What's going on?" "Nothing. Just curious. You know, medical bills, estate planning, thinking about the future. You start thinking about all kinds of things when you're lying in bed all day. That's not estate planning. That's divorce law. I should get some sleep. Chemo wipes me out." "Nathan, thanks for the information, Lauren. I'll call you soon." I hung up before she could push further. But I knew she wouldn't let it go. Laura never let anything go. It was what made her a great attorney. It was also what made her the only person I could trust with what I was about to do. 3 weeks later, I put my theory to the test. I was between chemo cycles, my body in that brief window of relative normality before the next round of poison. I'd lost 15 lbs. My clothes hung on me like I'd borrowed them from a bigger man. But my mind was sharp, sharper than it had been in years, focused by purpose. I've got a treatment appointment this afternoon, I told Melissa at breakfast. She was eating Greek yogurt, scrolling through Instagram. What time? 100. Should be done around 4. She nodded, still not looking at me. I'll have dinner ready when you get back. Nothing too heavy. Maybe soup. Soup sounds good. My appointment was real, but it ended at 1:30. Instead of going home, I drove to the boutique hotel from the credit card statements. It was a nice place tucked away on a quiet street downtown. Exposed brick, valet parking, the kind of hotel that catered to business travelers and apparently cheating spouses. I parked across the street in a coffee shop lot, adjusted my seat to get comfortable and waited. At 20:15, a BMW pulled into the hotel's lot. Navy blue, late model, pristine. I didn't recognize the car, but I wrote down the license plate anyway. At 2:23, Melissa's white Lexus pulled in beside it. She was wearing the red dress, the one I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary 3 years ago. She'd worn it that night and twice since, both times for dinner with friends I didn't particularly like. I'd never seen her wear it for me again. She walked into the hotel without looking around, without checking over her shoulder. She was comfortable here. This was routine. I sat in my car for 2 hours watching the hotel entrance. No one came out. The first hour was agony. Every instinct told me to storm inside, to confront them, to make a scene that would shatter the careful facade of our lives. My hands kept drifting toward the door handle. My jaw ached from clenching, but I didn't move. Somewhere during that second hour, I stopped shaking. The panic and grief that had been building for weeks condensed into something else, something cold and dense, like a weight settling in my chest. I became clinical, detached. I was observing a case study, gathering data. The patient was my marriage, and the diagnosis was terminal. I thought about all the nights I'd worked late, all the dinners I'd missed, all the times Melissa had complained that I wasn't present in us. I'd always felt guilty about those things, guilty that my patients came first, guilty that saving lives sometimes meant neglecting my own wife. Now, I wondered if it had mattered at all, if she'd already been looking for an exit even then, waiting for someone more exciting, more present, more whatever it was she thought she needed. I used to tell patients that the worst part of illness isn't the diagnosis. It's the waiting, the uncertainty, the not knowing. I'd been wrong. The worst part is when the uncertainty ends and you realize the thing you feared is real. At 4:17, they walked out together, and I didn't recognize him at first. He was taller than me, better built, with a kind of casual confidence that comes from a lifetime of getting what you want. He had silver at his temples, a tailored blazer, a watch that probably cost more than my first car. He moved like a man who'd never been told no. He put his hand on the small of Melissa's pack, my wife's back, and said something that made her laugh. That laugh. Then he turned and I saw his face clearly for the first time. Ryan Foster, our financial advisor, the man I'd trusted with my money, was sleeping with my wife. I sat there long after they'd driven away separately, carefully. The sun shifted across my dashboard, then disappeared behind the buildings. Street lights flickered on. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Running late at yoga. Start soup without me. I didn't respond. At some point I realized I wasn't just hurt. I wasn't just angry. I was building a case. The next morning, I paid cash for a voice-activated digital recorder at a surveillance equipment store on the east side of town. It was the kind of place that sold hidden cameras and GPS trackers, staffed by a kid in his 20s who looked like he'd seen every shade of paranoia walk through his door. "You want the voice-activated model," he said, not making eye contact. "Battery lasts about 70 hours. Memory holds up to 40 hours of audio. Does it pick up conversations from across a room up to about 35 depending on ambient noise?" He slid it across the counter. $180, cash only for this model. I paid and left without another word. I placed the recorder in my home office, tucked behind some medical journals on a shelf Melissa never touched. The room had become her unofficial phone booth. She took most of her private calls there, thinking I was too sick to notice. She was right that I was sick. She was wrong about me not noticing. 4 days later, I retrieved the recorder while she was at the grocery store. I sat in my car, parked 2 blocks away, and pressed play with shaking hands. The first few files were nothing. Melissa scheduling a hair appointment, confirming a dinner reservation, talking to her sister about some reality TV drama. I was starting to think I'd gotten nothing useful when the 4th file began. The sound quality was scratchy but clear enough. I heard Melissa's voice first mid-conversation. "Doing better than expected, actually. The doctor says he's responding well to treatment." A pause and Ryan's voice low and measured. "And that's not ideal. It complicates things." Melissa sighed. "I was hoping, well, you know what I was hoping. If he recovers fully, what's the timeline on divorce?" I pulled over. My hands were shaking again, but not from chemo. "I want to wait until he's back at work." Melissa said, "Let him rebuild his income for a year and AP2. Then I file. That way, I maximize the settlement, spousal support, division of assets, the whole package. And if he doesn't make it?" Melissa's response came without hesitation. "Then there's the $2 million policy. I've checked. I'm still the sole beneficiary. You verified. Last week, I told him I was updating our estate documents, made him sign a bunch of paperwork while he was half asleep from the meds. He didn't even read it. He signed everything I put in front of him." Ian laughed, a low conspiratorial sound that made my stomach turn. "He really has no idea, does he? He's a good man, Ryan." There was something almost like affection in her voice, the way you might talk about a faithful dog, but good men are easy to manage. The recording ended. I sat there, engine idling, staring at nothing. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was calculating my death as a financial event. A line item on a spreadsheet. A best-case scenario. I had spent my career helping people survive, and the woman I'd shared my life with was hoping I wouldn't. I called Derek Holloway the next day. He was a retired Austin PD detective, now working as a private investigator. A colleague had used him during a malpractice case years ago and spoken highly of his discretion. I needed discretion. We met at a coffee shop on South Congress, far from my neighborhood, one of those places with exposed brick and overpriced pastries filled with people who looked like they'd never worried about a thing in their lives. Derek was in his 60s with the weathered face of a man who'd seen too much and the calm demeanor of someone who'd made peace with it. He wore a plain button, down and khakis, the kind of clothes designed to be forgotten. He ordered black coffee, took a long sip, and looked at me with eyes that had spent 30 years rating suspects. "Tell me what you need," he said. I told him everything, the affair, the recordings, the hotel receipts, my suspicions that there was more in Tefan. I played him part of the first recording on my phone, keeping the volume low. He listened without interrupting, making occasional notes on a small pad with handwriting so neat it looked typed. When I finished, he sat down his pen and studied me for a moment. "You're handling this well," he said. "Most men in your position would be falling apart. I'm a doctor. We compartmentalize. That's one word for it." He picked up his coffee. "How long has the affair been going on?" "At least 4 months, based on the hotel charges, probably longer." "And you want me to dig into the financial advisor?" "Yes, I want to know who he is, whether he's done this before, whether there's a pattern. You want enough to bury him." I looked at Derek evenly. "I want the truth, whatever that looks like." He nodded slowly, tapping his pen against the pad. "I've been doing this work for 15 years. Cheating spouses, insurance fraud, custody disputes. I've seen it all. But what you're describing," he shook his head, "a wife discussing her husband's death as a payday. That's something else. Help me. Give me 2 weeks." He delivered in 10 days. We met at the same coffee shop. Derek slid a manila folder across the table, thick with documents. His expressionless hen. "If I show you this, I want you to understand something," he said. "What I found, it's going to make you angry. Angrier than you already are. You need to decide now how you're going to channel that anger. Because if you do something stupid, everything I've gathered becomes worthless." "I'm not going to do anything stupid." "Everyone says that. And then they do something stupid. I'm a scientist, Derek. I've spent my career making decisions based on evidence, not emotion. Show me what you found." He opened the folder. "Ryan Foster, 44 years old, licensed financial planner, registered investment advisor. On paper, he looks clean. Kidlefins, no complaints with the state board. But he was married before. His ex-wife, Brooke, lives in San Antonio now. I drove down and talked to her. Derek's expression was grim. She had quite a story." I opened the folder. Inside were photographs, financial records, a timeline of relationships, a pattern laid out in clinical detail. According to Brooke, Ryan has a type. Derek continued. He finds couples with money problems or sick spouses, gets close to the wives through the financial advising, gains their trust, makes them feel understood, then he makes his move. How many? Brooke knows of at least 3 before your wife. He had an affair with one of his clients while advising her and her husband on their joint portfolio. The couple divorced. Ryan took up with the wife for about 8 months before he got bored and moved on. To the next one. To the next one. Brooke thinks he's a predator. I'm inclined to agree. I stared at the photographs. Ryan with Brooke years ago, looking younger, but wearing the same self-satisfied smile. Ryan with another one I didn't recognize. And then Ryan with Melissa captured through a telephoto lens walking out of the boutique hotel with his hand on her back. There's more, Derek said. I looked into your finances, did some digging with the account numbers you gave me. I felt my jaw tighten. What did you find? Your wife's been moving money transfers to a personal account you're probably not aware of. 15 grand here, 20 there. Over the past 18 months, she's siphoned off nearly 140,000, all under the guise of household management. She probably figured you'd never check. She was right. I never had until I called Lauren that night and told her everything. I'm going to kill her. Lauren's voice was flat, dangerous. I'm going to drive up there and I'm going to kill her with my bare hands. That's not helpful. It would make me feel better. Lauren. Fine. Okay. Let me think. I heard her pacing, her heels clicking on hardwood. We document everything. Dates, times, amounts, every recording, every transfer, every hotel receipt. We build a case so airtight she can't squirm out of it. And Ryan, him, too. What he's done, advising on joint finances while sleeping with the client's spouse, that's a serious ethics violation, breach of fiduciary duty. We report him to the Texas State Securities Board, the CFP Board. Anyone who listen, can you represent me in the divorce? I thought you'd never ask. Her voice softened. Nathan, I'm so sorry. You're fighting for your life and she's can't. I can't even say it. Don't be sorry. Help me win. Oh, we're going to win. We're going to take everything she has and leave her with nothing but regret. Over the next several weeks, I became a ghost in my own life. I moved through my treatment appointments, my brief interactions with Melissa, my lonely hours in the bedroom, gathering evidence like a man preparing for war. Lauren came up from Houston every weekend. We'd meet at coffee shops and hotel lobbies, poring over documents, planning strategy. She connected me with a forensic accountant who traced Melissa's transfers with surgical precision. She filed preliminary paperwork with the court, keeping everything sealed until we were ready to strike. I was fighting cancer with one hand and fighting my wife with the other. And somewhere in there, I started to win. The key was letting her think she was winning first. My scans came back positive. The treatment was working, the cancer retreating. I sat in Tant Whitmore's office looking at the images on his monitor, watching the tumors shrink into ghosts of themselves. Nathan, this is exactly what he wanted to see, he said, clasping my shoulder. You're responding beautifully. At this rate, we could be talking remission within 3 months. What's the prognosis? Excellent. Better than excellent. He turned to face me fully. You know as well as I do what these numbers mean. You're going to beat this. I nodded, but I didn't feel the relief I expected. Instead, I felt something sharper, purpose. I need to ask you something, I said. If my wife calls, if she asks about my prognosis, what would you tell her? He found, I'd tell her you're doing well. Why? Can you soften it? Not lie, but emphasize the uncertainty, the side effects, the long road ahead. Nathan, what's going on? I met his eyes. We'd known each other for 15 years, attended conferences together, consulted on difficult cases. He deserved the truth, or at least part of it. Our marriage is falling apart, I said, and I need my wife to think I'm sicker than I am. Just for a little while. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, is she the reason you look like you haven't slept in a month? She's one of them. He nodded slowly. I can't lie to her if she asks directly, but I can emphasize the challenges ahead, the uncertainty of any cancer treatment. That's all I need. But I didn't tell Melissa the full truth. To her, I played up the fatigue, the weakness, the uncertainty. I spent more time in bed than I needed to. I let her think I was declining. And the more she thought I careless, she became. She started taking calls in the same room where I lay sleeping. She left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, logged into accounts she thought I'd never check. She stopped even pretending to care about appearances. The second recording I captured was worse than the first. Ryan's voice frustrated. How much longer do we wait? This is getting old, Melissa, I told you. The doctor said 6 more months of treatment minimum. If he survives, whatever. If he survives, I need him working for at least a year before I file. Otherwise, I won't get enough in the settlement. And us. I'm getting tired of sneaking around. After the divorce, we can be public. Maybe a year after that, we get married. No one will suspect anything. I've done this before, Mel. His voice was casual, almost proud. Patience is everything. I know. That's why I trust you. I've done this before." He'd actually said it out loud. The third recording came a few days later. Melissa talking to her sister Ashley, who apparently knew about the affair. "Don't you feel guilty at all?" Ashley's voice was hesitant, concerned. "He's sick, Mel. He might be dying. He was never going to give me the life I wanted. Ash, even healthy, he's boring, safe. All he cares about is work and his patients. Do you know how many dinners I've eaten alone while he was saving someone else's life? But you signed up for that. You knew he was a doctor when you married him." I was 27. I didn't know anything. Melissa's voice was bitter. "I thought money would be enough. It's not. I need someone who actually sees me. And I can see that. Ryan understands ambition. Ryan has vision. When he looks at me, I feel like I matter. And when Nathan looks at you, a long pause. He doesn't. Not anymore. Maybe he never did. Maybe I was always just furniture, something that came with the house. That's not true, isn't it? He forgot my birthday 2 years ago. My birthday, Ashley. He was at the hospital until midnight. And when he came home, he went straight to bed. Didn't even remember until I brought it up the next week. I remembered that night. I'd been in surgery for 14 hours trying to save a 16-year-old girl with leukemia. She died anyway. I came home broken and exhausted, and I crawled into bed beside Melissa and closed my eyes. I had forgotten her birthday. That was true. But I hadn't forgotten her. I just trying to save a child's life. It didn't seem like a fair trade anymore. "So, what's the plan?" Ashley asked. "Wait it out. If he survives, when he survives, sure. When he survives, I wait until he's earning again, build up our assets, then I file, take half of everything, and start over with Ryan. And if the cancer comes back," Melissa's voice was flat, "then the insurance pays out, and I don't have to wait." Ashley was quiet for a moment. "Then I don't know who you are anymore. Maybe you never did." Melissa's voice softened slightly. "Look, I know this sounds cold, but I've given him 12 years, Ash. 12 years of being second to his patients, second to his career, second to everything. I deserve to put myself first for once. At what cost? Whatever it takes. I saved the recordings, I added them to the fountain, and I kept watching." Lauren visited during Melissa's Tuesday yoga. We sat in my home office, the same room where my wife had discussed my death with her lover, and we planned. "You could file now," Lauren said, flipping through the evidence Derek had compiled. "You have more than enough. I want more." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the exhaustion in my bones. Real this time, not performed. "I want the advisor too." Lauren looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were the same grey as mine, a family trait we'd both inherited from our father. "That's not just divorce, Nathan. That's destruction." She sat in our kitchen and discussed my death like it was a stock option. I met her eyes. "Destruction is the minimum." She didn't argue. Over the next 2 weeks we put the pieces in place. I changed my life insurance beneficiary from Melissa to Lauren quietly through the official channels without telling my wife. I opened individual bank accounts and moved my direct deposit. I documented every unauthorized transfer, every forged signature, every lie. I drafted a divorce petition. I didn't file it yet. I was waiting for the right moment. The moment came on a Wednesday night, sooner than I expected. Melissa found a receipt I'd forgotten to destroy, the retainer for Derek's services, tucked in the back of a desk drawer I'd thought she never opened. She must have been looking for something, or maybe she was just getting paranoid, finally sensing that the ground was shifting beneath her feet. She confronted me in the kitchen at 11 p.m. I was sitting at the island drinking tea, unable to sleep. She stormed in, waving the crumpled paper like a weapon. "What the hell is this?" I sat down my mug and looked at her, really looked. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd thought I loved, was standing in front of me with fury in her eyes and guilt written across her face. She was wearing silk pajamas I'd bought her last Christmas. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Exactly what it looks like," I said. "You've been spying on me." Her voice rose. "You hired some sleazy private investigator to follow me around. I've been protecting myself from you." Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, then fear, then a quick calculation. I could almost see her mind working, gears turning, trying to figure out how much I knew. Not enough, she decided. She didn't know about the recordings. She thought I only suspected the affair. She tried to flip the script. "I can't believe you don't trusting. After everything I've done for this family, holding everything together while you've been sick. Stop. Cooking for you, driving you to appointments, managing our entire lives while you lay in bed feeling sorry for yourself." I said stop. "And this is how you repay me." "This is the thanks I get, Elissa." My voice was cold enough to freeze water. "Stop talking." She fell silent, her chest heaving. I stood up and for a moment she actually stepped back. That small retreat told me everything I needed to know about her conscience. "I think we need some time apart," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm going to stay at Lawrence for a few days." Relief washed over her face so quickly she couldn't hide it. She thought she had time now. Time to cover her tracks, to talk to Ryan, to figure out a counter-strategy. "Maybe that's best," she said, "for both of us. Some space to think about things." Yes, I agreed. Some space, Lindsay cut. I packed a bag that night and drove to a hotel, not Lauren's house, though Melissa didn't need to know that. I needed to be close. I needed to watch what she did next. The answer? Exactly what I expected. Through Derek's continued surveillance, I learned that she'd called Ryan in a panic 20 minutes after I left, that she'd tried to access our joint accounts the next morning and found my deposits missing, that she'd hired a lawyer recommended by Ian, which was her first major mistake. The trap was set. Now I just needed to spring it. I filed for divorce on a Thursday morning. Lauren drove up from Houston to represent me. We walked into the Travis County Courthouse together, submitted the paperwork, and walked back out into the pale spring sunshine. "How do you feel?" Lauren asked. "Like I'm about to step off a cliff." "That's normal." She squeezed my arm. "But you've got a parachute. Trust me." 2 hours later, a process server delivered the papers to Melissa at our house. Derek was watching from his car down the street. He called me that evening with his report. She stood on the front porch reading the documents for about 10 minutes. Just stood there frozen. Then she went inside, and I could hear her screaming from the driveway. The neighbors probably heard it 3 houses down. Screaming at who? At herself, mostly. Then she got on the phone. The papers contained everything. The adultery claim with Ryan Foster named as co-respondent, the financial misconduct allegations, the request for a full forensic accounting of marital assets, and most damaging of all, the reference to recorded evidence of conspiracy. She called Ryan immediately. This call, too, was captured, not by my recorder this time, but through a legal subpoena Lauren had obtained. Recorded. Ryan's voice was sharp with panic. "What do you mean recorded?" "What did you say on the calls?" "Everything." Melissa was crying now, her voice ragged. "I told you everything. I thought I was alone. I thought he was asleep. You told me everything." His voice went cold. "You absolute idiot. Ryan, we need to figure this out. We need to get our story straight." "There is no story, Melissa. There is no we. Do not call me again." The line went dead. The legal proceedings moved faster than I expected. Melissa's attorney, the one Ryan had recommended, withdrew from the case within a week, citing conflict of interest once he learned about Ryan's involvement. She scrambled to find new representation and ended up with a mid-tier family lawyer who looked shell-shocked at the first hearing when he saw the evidence arrayed against his client. Lauren was methodical. She presented the recordings, the financial documents, the testimony from Derek, and the forensic accountant. She painted a picture of calculated betrayal so detailed and damning that even the opposing counsel stopped objecting. By the time the divorce hearing came around 4 months later, the battle was already won. What happened in the courtroom was just the formal acknowledgement of a defeat that had been sealed months before. I walked into Judge Patricia Vaughn's courtroom feeling stronger than I had in a year. My latest scans were clear. The cancer was in remission, possibly gone for good. I'd gained back most of the weight I'd lost. I wore a suit that fit again, and I looked like a man who'd survived something terrible and come out the other side, because I had. I'd survived cancer and I'd survived my wife. Melissa sat at the opposite table looking smaller than I remembered. The past few months had aged her, lines around her eyes, a tightness to her jaw that hadn't been there before. Her hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and she wore a navy dress that was probably meant to look modest and sympathetic. She wouldn't meet my gaze. Her lawyer was competent, but he tried to argue that the recordings were obtained illegally, but Lauren had shut that down quickly and decisively. "Your Honor, Texas is a one-party consent state. My client was present in his own home for the majority of these recordings. The remainder were obtained through proper legal channels, including subpoenas approved by this court. Objection overruled." Judge Vaughn said, "The recordings will be admitted." When they were played in open court, I watched the judge's face. Patricia Vaughn had been on the bench for 23 years. She'd seen everything, heard everything. But as Melissa's voice filled the courtroom, "If he ties, there's $2 million in life insurance." I saw her expression harden into something like disgust. Ryan's voice came next. "I've done this before, Nell." The gallery was mostly empty, just Lauren, Derek, and a few court staff. But the silence was absolute. The forensic accountant testified next, laying out the $142,000 in unauthorized transfers with charts and bank records. He showed documentation of 3 signatures Melissa had forged on account access forms, comparing them to verified samples of both our handwriting. "These signatures were clearly not made by Dr. Reed," he concluded. "The stroke patterns, the spacing, the pressure, they're inconsistent with his verified samples and consistent with Mrs. Reed's." Melissa's lawyer objected weakly and was overruled. Ryan had been subpoenaed but failed to appear. His attorney had submitted a letter claiming health reasons. Judge Vaughn issued a bench warrant without comment. When all the evidence was presented, the judge took a brief recess. Melissa sat frozen at her table, staring straight ahead. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something urgently, but she didn't respond. She looked like a woman watching her life collapse in slow motion. 20 minutes later, Judge Vaughn returned. The bailiff called the court to order, and a hush fell over the room. I glanced at Lauren. She gave me a small nod. The judge folded her hands on the bench and looked at Melissa with the cold regard of someone who had weighed a soul and found it lacking. In my 23 years on the bench, she began, I have seen many cases of marital betrayal. Infidelity is unfortunately common. It is painful, destructive, but often understandable in its humanicness. People make mistakes. They succumb to temptation. They hurt the ones they love and spend years trying to make amends. She paused and her expression hardened. I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty. Mrs. Reed did not merely have an affair. She treated her husband's cancer diagnosis as a business opportunity. She discussed his potential death with her lover as if reviewing quarterly earnings. She forged documents, misappropriated funds, and showed a pattern of deception that this court finds deeply troubling. Melissa's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Melissa herself didn't moose. The recordings presented as evidence are particularly disturbing. To hear a wife speak of her husband's life insurance policy with such clinical detachment, to hear her express disappointment that his treatment was succeeding, is something I will not soon forget. She turned her gaze to me briefly, and I saw something that might have been sympathy. Dr. Reed faced two battles simultaneously, one against a disease that could have killed him, and one against a spouse who apparently hoped it would. That he survived both speaks to a strength of character this court finds commendable. She picked up her notes. The court finds Mrs. Reed's conduct so egregious as to warrant a disproportionate division of assets. The ruling was everything Lauren had hoped for. I received the house, 80% of remaining liquid assets, all retirement accounts, and no alimony obligation. Melissa received 20% of liquid assets, roughly 95,000, her personal vehicle, and her personal items. The 142,000 in misappropriated funds was ordered returned to me. When it was over, I stood to leave. Melissa finally looked at me. "You'll regret this," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'll make sure you regret this for the rest of your life." I picked up my briefcase. "No," I said, "I really won't." I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Ryan Foster's unraveling took longer, but it was no less complete. I filed the complaint the same week the divorce was finalized. I sat in Lauren's office signing documents, watching her organize the evidence against him with the same precision she'd brought to my case. "This is going to take time," she warned me. "Regulatory bodies move slowly, but when they move decisively. I can wait. Are you sure this is what you want? You've already won. The divorce is done. You Kitahe, start your new life. Never think about either of them again." I looked at her. He's going to do this again. If I don't stop him, some other husband is going to sit where I sat listening to recordings of his wife planning his funeral. I can't let that happen. Lauren nodded slowly. "Then let's bury him." The Texas State Security Board and the CFP Board both completed their investigations within 6 months. The findings were damning. Undisclosed conflicts of interest, exploitation of privileged financial information for personal relationships, pattern of predatory behavior toward vulnerable clients, and violation of fiduciary duty standards. I attended the hearing where they announced the penalties. Ryan was there looking smaller than I remembered, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit in one. He'd lost weight and not in a healthy way. His eyes were hollow. His CFP certification was revoked permanently. His securities license was suspended indefinitely. He was fined $75,000 and required to notify all current clients of the violations. As we filed out of the hearing room, Ryan caught my eye. For a moment, I thought he might say something, apologize, threaten, beg. Instead, he just looked at me with an expression, and I recognized the face of a man who had finally run out of options. I walked past him without a word, but the real damage came from the syphilins. Brooke, his ex-wife, filed first. She cited the pattern established by my case and sought damages for emotional distress and financial harm related to her own divorce. 2 other former clients joined as plaintiffs, women I'd never met, whose lives had been destroyed by the same playbook Ryan had used on Melissa. The lawsuits dragged on for over a year. By the time they were settled, Ryan was broke. He'd sold his BMW, then his condo, then most of his possessions. The last I heard, he was back in Leech living with his parents, selling term life insurance policies at his uncle's agency. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. As for Melissa, she tried to rebuild in her way. She moved to San Marcos after the house sold, renting a small apartment near the university. She got a job as an administrative assistant at a car dealership, the kind of work she'd always considered beneath her. She tried to write a tell-all blog about being victimized by her ex-husband, spinning a story about an emotionally unavailable doctor who had driven her into another man's arms. It gained no traction. The few comments that appeared were brutal. She never remarried. Ryan had blocked her number months before the divorce was finalized. She'd lost her partner in crime and her meal ticket in Wen's stroke. I heard through Derek, who occasionally checked in on her movements, more out of professional habit than any request from me, that she tried dating a few times. A car salesman from the dealership where she worked, a divorced accountant she met at a bar. None of them lasted more than a few weeks. She's not the same person, Derek told me over the phone one afternoon. Something in her broke. She walks around like she's waiting for something bad to happen. She made her choices. I said that she did. He paused. You doing okay? Better than okay, actually. Glad to hear it. You deserve it. I hung up and sat in my workshop thinking about what Derek had said. Something in her broke. I wondered if that was true, or if the thing that broke had always been broken. If Melissa had always been hollow in some fundamental way and I'd just been too busy to notice. It didn't matter anymore. That was someone else's life, someone else's problem. I had a new life now, and it was waiting for me. A year after the divorce, I met Amanda. It was at a medical conference in Dallas, one of those professional gatherings I used to dread, but had started attending again as part of returning to my life. We were both on a canon, patient communication, and she asked a question that made me laugh out loud. Dr. Reed, she'd said, you talk about honesty with patients, but isn't the truth that us lie all the time? We lie about survival rates, about pain management, about quality of life. We lie to protect people from reality. We don't lie, I said. We contextualize. Is that what you tell yourself? The audience laughed. I found myself smiling. After the panel, she found me at the coffee station. I hope I didn't offend you. You made me think that's harder to find than you'd expect. Her name was Amanda Price. She was a palliative care specialist from Fort Worth, 40 years old. Divorced, no children. She had dark hair, direct eyes, and a complete absence of pretense. I read about your case, she said. The medical blogs covered it pretty extensively. I felt my guard go up. The oncologist whose wife, I don't care about that, she interrupted. What interested me was how you handled it. Fighting cancer while fighting it, Ifons. That's not something they teach in med school. No, I agreed. It's not. Buy me a drink sometime and tell me about it. I looked at her directness, her lack of agenda, the way she stood like someone who knew exactly who she was. Okay, I said. A drink sounds good. That drink led to dinner. Dinner led to more dinners, then weekends, then something that felt dangerously like hope. We took things slow. We were both cautious people by nature, and we'd both been burnt. The first time I told her the whole story, really told her, not the sanitized version from the medical blogs, we were sitting in her apartment in Fort Worth, sharing a bottle of wine. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly serious. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Can I ask you something, Annie? Do you hate her, Melissa?" I thought about it. I used to when I was listening to those recordings, when I was in the hospital for chemo, and I knew she was it in. Yes, I hated her. I dreamed about destroying her, taking everything she had, making her suffer the way I was suffering. And now I just feel nothing. She's like a character from a movie I saw years ago. I remember what she did, but the emotion is gone. Amanda nodded slowly. That's it. Hate is heavy. It weighs you down. What about your ex? Do you hate him? She smiled sadly. Some days, most days, I just feel sorry for him. He gave up something real for something shiny, and shiny things don't last. I'm not going to pretend I'm over it, she added. My ex, he found someone younger, someone easier. It broke something in me that I'm still putting back together. I understand, but I've learned that the wound healing doesn't mean you can't walk. You just walk differently. I understood exactly what she meant. 6 months later, I sold the West Lake Hills house. Too many memories there. Too many rooms where I'd heard my wife plotting my death. I bought a smaller place on the outskirts of Austin with land and trees, in a detached workshop that had clearly been loved by its previous owner. I started building again. Small projects at first, a cutting board, a picture frame, then bigger. A coffee table, a chest of drawers, a rocking chair. For Amanda's birthday, I made her a bookshelf, solid oak, hand-fitted joints, finished with oil ID rubbed in over 3 separate days. It wasn't perfect. There was a slight wobble I couldn't quite fix, but it was mine. When I gave it to her, she ran her hands over the wood and started to cry. "I'm sorry," she said, laughing through the tears. It's the most thoughtful gift anyone's ever given me. It's just a bookshelf." No. She looked at me and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen from a woman in years. Not gratitude, not obligation, but something simpler and more powerful. It's time. Your time. That's what you gave me. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just held her. My 5-year scan came back clean. In medical terms, I was cured. The radiologist showed me the images, pointing out all the places where the cancer used to be. "There's nothing there," she said, smiling. "You're one of the lucky ones." Lucky. That was an interesting word for it. I called Lauren from the plant, sitting in my car the same way I had 5 years earlier when I'd first received my diagnosis. But this time the tears that came were tears of relief. "You did it, big brother," Lauren said, her voice rough with emotion she rarely showed. "You beat it. I had help. That's what family's for." She paused. "You want to try up this weekend? We'll go somewhere nice. I'd like that." We still had dinner every Sunday when our schedules allowed. Sometimes Amanda joined us. Lauren had met someone herself, a prosecutor from the DA's office, a woman named Claire, who could match Lauren argument for argument, objection for objection. They were kit together, the way strong people sometimes are when they find someone equally strong. On a Saturday morning, I stood in my workshop sanding a piece of maple for a project I hadn't decided on yet. Through the window, I could see Amanda on the porch waiting in the early light, a cup of coffee steaming beside her. My phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. Dinner Sunday. Bringing someone I want you to meet. I smiled, type-tack looking forward to it. I sat down the phone and picked up the sandpaper. The sawdust smelled like possibility. The wood was smooth under my hands. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving.